It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through, that I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I would do, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
First you both go out your way and the vibe is feeling stronger. What's small turn to a friendship turn to a bond, and that bond will never be broken. The love will never get lost. And when brotherhood come first, then the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn, and that line is what we reach. So remember me when I'm gone. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
Let the light guide your way. Yeah. Hold every memory as you go, and every road you take will always lead you home. Oh, it's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Good evening, everybody. I'm too close to that. My name is Becky Stewart, and I want to thank everybody for being here, whether you're at home online seeing this, and especially those of you in person tonight. We really appreciate it. You'll hear more from me here in a little bit, but I do want to kind of explain the faces you've seen scrolling through while you're sitting here waiting. All of those kids in this slideshow have three things in common. Number one, they're all teenagers, and sadly you saw one as young as 13 in there. Number two, they're all dead. And number three, they all died from fentanyl poisoning. And the really sad part about all that is we could sit here for months on end and never see a repeated face up there from all the deaths that are happening because of this. And so we have a very, very heavy topic to discuss this evening, but one that's so important to learn more about so you can share and educate and really have good, open, honest conversations with friends, family members, teens, because you could be saving lives. Correction, you will be saving lives. So I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Arzo Dost, who has just been a godsend to me and our family since tragedy hit us. And again, I'll tell you more about that here in a little bit. But Arzo has been reporting on fentanyl for a good 4 years now, and she's still hanging in there, and she's so knowledgeable and is really passionate about getting the word out there. So I'm going to turn it over to Arzo and let her introduce our panel members and just go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight and being part of this really important conversation. I got to thank Becky. Because of her, we are all here. And I see Dwayne in the audience, Cameron's father, hello. Tonight, Cameron's memory lives on. And it's thanks to you guys and the change that you're pushing for and trying to make in our communities. I'm personally impacted because I have 3 small children, and this topic tonight worries me. I thought, my kids are young, I still got a long time, I don't have to worry about this, but boy, am I wrong. As Becky mentioned, I'm with KXAN News, and this is something that we have dedicated a lot of time and resources to. We really we've been covering it for years, but really focusing on the topic of fentanyl in 2018, when honestly we started meeting more families like Becky's, like yours, like mine, and we started seeing the impact in our communities. This wasn't just something impacting one group of people or another. This is now impacting communities across our cities, neighborhoods, our neighbors, our family members, sons, daughters, friends. You may have heard about fentanyl. Becky has been going to schools talking about it, and she's often surprised, as I am, about the groups of people that have heard about fentanyl and then the many people that still really don't know what it is. You hear about it being deadly. You hear about it being seized at the border. But what is it, and what are the dangers of it? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is up to 100 times stronger than morphine. Pharmaceutical fentanyl is prescribed to patients who are dealing with severe pain, who have had advanced stage, for instance, cancer. But it's the illegal fentanyl that worries many people that you see here tonight and across our communities. It's the legal fentanyl that's being pressed into pills people think who are buying Adderall, Oxycontin, Xanax. It's what's in those pills. And it really just takes one pill that can be so deadly. In our reporting, I can name a ton of stats that we found. We just wrapped up a series about fentanyl and solutions that are working in other states. And it's interesting to see how other states are tackling this problem. Texas is getting there. But the one statistic, the one thing that I keep going back to is that, and this is all according to the CDC, which gathers this kind of data regularly. The latest data from January of 2020 to now, deaths caused by fentanyl have not only increased quickly, but they're now more common than cocaine and heroin. That's gotta be alarming. Tonight, you're gonna hear a wide range of perspective, people who have personally been impacted by this, and they wanna make a difference, but they're giving you the power to make a difference as well. Before I introduce our first panelist, I wanna bring your attention to the phone number that's on the screen. If you are here tonight and you don't feel comfortable at the very end of our panel discussion asking any of the questions that you might have, please feel free to text it. We've got Dwayne down here who's monitoring the text messages, and anyone here will be happy to answer those questions for you. And then, of course, we'll welcome you to ask us any questions. We want you to be part of this solution that we're working towards. And with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our first panelist. Please meet Gina Gietti. supervisory special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, which has got an office here in Austin. Hi, Gina.
Hello, so I am the supervisory agent here in the Austin office for Drug Enforcement Administration. And what I'd like to tell you today is a little bit about the national picture. We are located across the country, and this story here in our area is one of the same across the entire country. So it is not isolated to just our area. So much so that our administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration in DC went ahead and launched a campaign called One Pill Can Kill. Now, for us, normally, we are doing the higher level investigations and the large distributors, but it has impacted this country so intensely that my group specifically is also investigating the distributors that are causing these overdose deaths. And so I encourage you first and foremost to go on the DEA's website, and you can get any information on that's going to be presented here tonight, as well as more information on fentanyl if you don't get it tonight. And there's lots of stories on there across the country. Some you're going to hear tonight. We are not isolated. This is not an isolated incident. It is common across the entire country. Next slide.
You were waiting for your slide?
Yes, sorry, next slide. So if you can see there, those are just some common things that we're hearing in the news breaks and the things that are being put out, the warnings. We've actually issued several public warnings because we think this stuff is so dangerous, and it has proved to be entirely dangerous. And I've been an agent now for about 27 years. And when I started, you could put a drug in front of me and I could tell you that's cocaine, that's heroin, that's Oxycontin. Those days are gone. Because what's happening right now is they're making those things look like legitimate products. So the most important thing when I'm talking to students or to parents, that you never know what you're getting. Unless that prescription's coming out of a pharmacy and prescribed by your doctor, you have no idea. And there's a big fallacy going around on how to avoid having the overdose reaction. We had a takedown just a couple weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to speak with an addict who was involved in the investigation. Him and his girlfriend were taking in hordes of 50 to 100 fentanyl-laced Oxycontin pills per day. And so you might ask, why are they alive, and why is someone who took it one time no longer with us? And that's the predicament. That is the chance that people are taking when they ingest one of these pills. And they're coming out with fallacies. Well, there's a hot spot. If you ingest it, or if you crush it up and snort it, or if you put it into your veins in a shot, then you're going to more likely have an overdose. So now, the most current thing that I've heard that's out there is what they're doing is trying to smoke it. They believe that if they're going to smoke the Oxycontin-laced fentanyl pills, that they're going to avoid those hot spots and overdoses, which is factually untrue. So that's the most important message that I wanted to get out today. Next slide. And this, again, it just reiterates that this is an issue across the country. And I will tell you that it is not just across the country. We're becoming more aware of it globally. In my last few years here in Austin, we actually worked a case where this stuff was coming out of China. So it is not just our Mexican border, it is China. We were able to work an investigation here where we went straight to the lab in China, and the Chinese authorities worked with us. So it is a global issue. The overdose deaths and the instances seem to be more common because the United States is the #1 consumer. So although it's coming from Mexico and China, the #1 consumer is here in the United States. Next slide. So this shows you that is a lethal dose. They're saying about 7 grains of salt is all it takes to cause an overdose death. And so that shows you the very, very, very small amount that it takes. Next slide. So A common question we get asked all the time is, how can I tell if a pill is actual or if it's counterfeit? And in my experience and seeing this stuff pretty much daily in our seizures, I can tell you that I cannot tell maybe 50% of the time. And the things that we look for is maybe the pill isn't pressed as hard. It's a little loose. Things come looser, or maybe the monogram in it or the trademark is a little less clear than it usually is. But to be completely honest with you, we don't know until that drug goes to our chemists. So the chemists have to do chemical breakdowns to tell us the exact percentages and what is in those counterfeit pills. So 9 out of 10 times, I'm not sure of what is in the drug either, or if it's illegal or not, until it goes to those chemists. So if we can't tell, and I've been doing this for 26 years, you sure can't tell on the street. Next slide. Again, there is some actual ones and some counterfeit ones, and you can see a little bit of the markings are off a little bit, but it is so slight. And what we're seeing trend-wise, you might think, okay, well, I'm going to stay away from OxyContin because it seems to be that the OxyContin is the one that's laced with fentanyl. Well, I can tell you a couple years ago, it was all Adderall. And maybe 6 months ago, it was all the Xanax-looking stuff. So they're constantly changing it. Even a year ago, it was the Vicodin. We were going after the counterfeit Vicodin. So they are an ever-changing marketing type of system out there, because they want to avoid law enforcement, and they want you to make you think it's a little bit safer, which it's not at all. So just because it's not OxyContin, that's the other message. It could still be laced with fentanyl. Next slide. So this again shows you a counterfeit Xanax. So you can see, and people get confused too with the color. Well, if I have a yellow one and this one's gray, then this one may be counterfeit, or this one may not be. Well, in the legitimate world, the different makers, the different pharmaceutical companies may make them in a different color. So color is also, markings and color doesn't tell you you're getting an authentic substance. Next slide. This alone shows you how many counterfeit pills that we have seized, that it takes up an entire shelf in only one of our labs, and we have 8 labs across the country. I mean, this stuff is coming into our labs so much and so quickly that they are not able to analyze it in time for some of our court cases, because that's how much we are seizing. So much so that even in this Austin area, we've had to rely on the state and locals in their labs and DPS for getting analysis a little bit quicker, because we are so overwhelmed with our seizures. Next slide. And this is again, and I think it's going to be talked about a little bit more. So in the last 2 years, the bulk of the investigations that I've been involved in and my group has been involved in, it's all stemming from social media, and it's all stemming from the dark web. And the problem with this is for us, it's evidentially challenging, but also things have changed. I mean, you may never meet the person that mails you that drug that you get from Snapchat or GroupMe. So parents, and I know the kids aren't gonna wanna hear this, but you need to have access to your child's phone, and you need to go through those apps with them, because I have talked to so many parents who are seeing it. Other kids are sending Snapchats, and then it's getting around, and the parent has no idea, because like you know, a lot of those applications are encrypted. A lot of those applications, after the video is viewed, can disappear, and so you really have to be an active parent today. There is no more. It was funny because I looked at when I was giving these speeches a decade ago, it was like, hey parents, you better be checking the garbage in your child's room. You better be looking under their mattress. Now, unfortunately, it's sped up to social media. So we have to be up and going with our children and with what's going on in the world. Next slide. So I'm going to leave this one for Detective Miller. just to educate you on maybe some of the lingo that happens with emojis and all that thing. So you might see emojis and things like that on your child's phone or Snapchat or something, and these are only a few that we know about. Next.
Thank you, Gina. This is actually a great transition to Sergeant Justin Miller. He's with Cedar Park's Police Department's Organized Crime Unit. He's going after the dealers, and he's made it his personal mission to get as many off our streets as possible. Hi, Sergeant Miller.
So I started with Cedar Park in 2008, and for about the last 9 years, I've worked narcotics. And it's changed over the years, and kind of starting back to where my start in narcotics, we investigated all types of drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, but pills, pharmaceuticals have always been on the table. They've always been something we've investigated because they've been widely abused. And about a little over 2 years ago now, we saw a new drug trend. But instead of seeing that on the streets from our patrol folks or, from different calls, we started responding to poisonings, and unfortunately where a lot of victims passed away from fentanyl poisoning. As the drug became more popular, we started seeing more and more dealers and seeing this trend becoming more popular than any drug that we've investigated, at least I have, over the last 9 years. So what I want to first kind of talk about is what these pills are, and Gina kind of touched on it, but the pills are not what you would get from Walgreens. Several years ago, that was a very common way of distribution. Is a drug dealer would either talk someone into selling their prescription or faking a prescription, and they'd get those from the pharmacy, and then they turn around and sell them. These days, pills are what we call pressed, and so instead of a pill that comes from a pharmacy, it's coming from someone's garage. It's coming from, a shop somewhere where someone has obtained the prints for these pills and been able to create them as if they had just come from a distributor or a pharmacy. The worst thing about it is, just like Gina said, you don't know what you're going to get, and the dosage amount, the dosage units, it's not as if you would take a Xanax and you build a immunity to it or a resistance to it. You can take one of these pills, you can take 10 of these pills, but one very well may have a what they call a hot load in it, and it proves fatal. So unfortunately, that's what brought this to our radar in Cedar Park, is the amount of poisonings and the amount of overdoses. We started seeing the trend of these. They were referenced as perks or Percocets. They weren't. Labeled as or manufactured as oxycodones. But if you ever see, a term of perk or Roxy or Oxy or Blue, that's generally how these pills are marketed. Especially these days, as it's becoming more and more popular, coverage through the media. They're having to change the way they do it. But one way they have changed, these drug dealers have turned to social media and everything from Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, but then also Telegram, WhatsApp. You can create actual pages to where you can have followers to a page, and it's almost like for lack of a better term, a garage sale. You can post whatever you have for sale on there, and once you post that, it instantly goes to however many users you have, and all they have to do is respond to it, set up a time, set up a location, and they can buy 1 pill, 20 pills, and they just continue to go on. And the draw to sell these pills has become even more popular than anything we've seen, because the pills are very easy to conceal. You can buy these pills for a couple bucks and turn around and sell them for $10 or $15. And we've seen people in the local area that are buying 1,000 pills, and they'll turn around and sell them 100 a day, and they'll make thousands of dollars. So of course there's a draw for these drug dealers. When we're able to monitor, we're able to intercept that, and we can see the thousands of pills being marketed. Those are, if we can find it as police officers, that have to kind of work our way into it. In today's community, through social media, it's very easy to find somebody that can sell them, so that's definitely a concern. If you see these applications here, these are one of the most popular ones we've seen. Snapchat, WhatsApp, Telegram, Twitter, everything can, you have direct messages through there that you can erase or that are, it's designed to erase after you communicate them. But probably the most serious part of this is the fact that not just the poisonings, but the overdose, the fatal poisonings that we've seen. And again, we've had folks that take them to treat addiction, and we've had victims that take them for a party drug, and you never really know what you're going to get out of them. And a lot of the victims that we've encountered didn't think that it was going to be anything different than the Xanax that they've taken before or any other pills. So what our group has done is it's kind of a twofold part, not just investigating the distributors, but also when we have a victim that's been poisoned by these pills, we actually try to track down and work a case for the distributors that actually have caused the poisonings or caused the overdoses. And that has turned into about 90% of what we do. We've just recently, in January, we indicted 13 people on federal charges it was a group identified that were distributing hundreds of thousands of these pills. And fortunately, through the legislature, which Representative Johnson will talk about later, there have been stiffer penalties. There have been some higher levels of accountability that hopefully these drug dealers are going to start realizing and start understanding that this is more serious of an offense than even heroin these days. Fortunately, we can look at somebody who wants to sell these, and before where you could say you're looking at a minimum sentence of 2 years, well, now you're looking at a minimum sentence of 20 years. So we continue to investigate these, we continue to monitor it, and our goal has been to catch these distributors and hold them accountable and try to get these pills off of the street. If you can go to the next slide real quick. I've got a picture of, so the large group of pills on the right, those are actual pills that we've seized recently, compared to the pills on the left are from the pills from the actual manufacturer. And just like she said, we can't even tell the difference. So it's almost impossible to believe that a person that buys these pills would be able to go and pick them up and say, oh, this is fake, I'm not going to take it, because they look just like you would get from Walgreens, from Rite Aid or anywhere else. But when it comes down to our goals are to not only enforcement, but the education. It literally is, when they say one pill can kill, that is the absolute truth, and we've seen it too many times. In fact, our second case, there were 2 individuals that took a pill, shared it, one of them passed away. So it is serious in the point that one pill can kill you.
Thank you, Sergeant Miller. How we connected at KXAN with Sergeant Miller was through our next panelists, Becky and Dwayne Stewart. Becky's familiar to you guys in this community because of Cameron. So, Becky, I'll let you take it over.
Thank you, Arzo. Personally, I want to thank you two to my right for what you're doing in taking this crisis head on. It's very much appreciated. So yeah, the pictures you guys see up here in the center are all of my son Cameron. March 20th of 2021, almost a year ago, Cameron was found dead in his apartment in Leander. And an autopsy was performed and toxicology came back, and his sole cause of death was fentanyl poisoning. And it is a poisoning because overdose is used way too much. Cameron didn't overdose. Overdose means you took too much of a substance that you knew you were taking. You ingested too much, not always intentionally, sometimes intentionally, but Cameron had no idea. He made an extremely poor choice to buy a pill off of Snapchat. And that one pill that he took ended his life. And I'm looking in this audience right now, and I know online there are so many people who loved Cameron, but there are so many people that knew him personally. Cameron's dad and stepmom are in this audience, and if we had more room up here, they'd all be up here, but so many people loved and cared for him. This building is where my kids went to school. Cameron went to school, kindergarten through 11th grade here. We went to church here. Cameron and I sat right over there on Sundays at church. Did Cameron struggle with substances? Yes. But Cameron was on the right path to turning his life around and getting clean and staying clean, and he was trying so hard, a 19-year-old kid with all the pressures that he had, that all kids have these days, that he caved, he gave in, and he made that extremely poor choice that ended his life. And our lives will never be the same. But I want to make it very clear, this is not just an addiction or a substance abuse issue. There are so many parents I have met across the nation that have lost their kids who never had taken a substance in their life. They were at a party, took a pill, and that was it. They were gone. I know parents who have lost 2 sons in one event. They both took pills, and their lives are forever changed. Their families' lives are forever changed. So after Cameron died, I'm not one who can just sit and let my kid's death be nothing more than a statistic. And it took a while, but I knew education was going to be where I needed to focus, because that's kind of tangible for me. I'm able to, that's low-hanging fruit for me. I can't go out and run the streets trying to find these guys that are selling pills. I'll leave that up to these guys. But so a few months after he died, I connected with an organization out of California called Song for Charlie, Charlie is also someone who died from fentanyl poisoning, and his parents started the organization. And they had a webinar that was how to get fake pill education into schools. I didn't have anything better to do, so I thought, okay, I'll take this. Didn't know if that was really where I wanted to go, but that lit a fire under me, because I realized I could do that. I can be bold and start approaching these schools, and it's exactly what I did. I started reaching out to schools and telling my story and our family's story, and at that point in time, we did get some that were willing to let us come in and talk. So Cameron's dad and I give presentations to students. Today, we presented here in this very building to middle schoolers and high schoolers who heard the story of Cameron, what happened to him, the dangers of fentanyl, and they heard the same message over and over and over again about how just that one pill could end their lives. And but at one point in time, I felt the need to make it more personal, more Cameron, and that's why you see the Change for Cam, a Change for Cam up there, and that's kind of what our mission's name is going forward, because we feel like that's honoring to our son. And what students and families hear from our discussions, we hope they do leave and make a change for Cam and save lives, because what you're hearing tonight is literally going to save lives. And you'll never know that you're saving a life, because you could be keeping somebody from taking a pill that you'll never know they were actually going to take. But to have those conversations with others, and especially with your teenagers' parents, and to keep having those conversations. It's not a one-and-done conversation. It's a continued conversation to where those kids, whether it's your friends of your children that are at your house and they feel comfortable talking, always be open to having those conversations with them. And as Gina said, look at their phones. Kids are good at hiding stuff, and apps are good at hiding stuff. And it's good to seek out. I mean, I'm sure Sergeant Miller would welcome a phone call on, hey, what are the latest apps out there? How do I see what's on my kid's phone? You know, find out. I didn't know what apps would hide things. I did check Cameron's phone, but he lived in an apartment on his own. He was technically an adult. He was 19, and he knew dangers. I think he just thought he was invincible. And I just hope and pray that leaving tonight, that people feel like they're equipped with some knowledge and just willpower to go and have these discussions. So thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Our next group of panelists help children and have been saving lives. I want to introduce Melissa Campbell and Dr. Mark Janes. They're with Bluebonnet Trails Community Services, mental health service providers. Hi, guys.
Hi, I'm Melissa Campbell, and I'm with Bluebonnet Trails. I'm a substance use counselor, and so I work with a lot of adolescents and adults, too. And what we do is we do screenings to see if people might have a substance use disorder. If they do, we bring them into treatment. And so, a lot of what we're seeing in the screenings is the blue oxys that they've been showing pictures of. Most of the people that we have had report that they've used fentanyl are the blue oxy 30s. But we've also seen it in Xanax as well. But one of the things that, I polled our counselors trying to get a feel for what each area that we service, are doing and what's out there. And they said that out in the Marble Falls area, a couple of kids used a vape pen, a THC vape pen, and ended up in the hospital. And so they're not sure if it was a fentanyl overdose or not. They're still with us. They did not pass away, fortunately, but that's something that is new that I hadn't heard about yet. So that's what's been going on. Now, we don't really have an accurate count of the adolescents that are using fentanyl, simply because it's not being tested for. There is not a test that's approved in the state of Texas to test fentanyl. And so, I also work with our medication-assisted treatment program for opioid use disorder, and it's an adult program, but we have younger adults that come in like 18, 19, 20 years old. And so what we do in the medication-assisted treatment program is we have them test their own to just see if they test positive for fentanyl. Since it's not approved for us to do medically, we have them test it. And I would say more than 50% test positive for fentanyl. And anybody that's taking a pill from the street has tested positive for it. So, I think that it's important that we change the laws to get the fentanyl test approved in the state of Texas. I think that's going to be very, very important going forward. And also Narcan. I have a box of Narcan right here. Every parent that has a child at risk should have Narcan in their house, just like a fire extinguisher. Because, and I have cases of it I brought with me. If anybody wants some after this is over, I'd be happy to pass out Narcan. I've got plenty in my car too. So I think that, it's having an open, honest dialogue with your kids is the most important thing. I know a lot of kids are afraid to tell their parents about stuff, But if you could encourage that to not be afraid to talk to them, and I think Dr. James is going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'll let him go ahead and take over from here.
I'm Mark James, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer and a child psychiatrist with Bluebonnet Trails Community Services. And I do want to talk about communication and also talk about some of the mental health aspects that go along with substance use. And I know the kids that I see very commonly have co-occurring conditions where they have a mental health issue along with substance use. And sometimes that it's like a self-treatment of their mental health and emotions and how they're feeling. And so I don't know if we have slides up for this, but you know, there's a lot of different people that are a lot of different reasons that people use. And sometimes it's around boredom, it can be stress, it can be curiosity. But like I mentioned, oftentimes it is associated with a mental health problem. And so how do you identify that? How do you know if a child is experiencing a mental health problem? And there are definitely some signs. And the most common psychiatric conditions that we encounter with teenagers and kids are mood disorders like depression. And so often with depression, what you'll see and what kids may experience, obviously a change in mood, feeling sad, feeling really irritable, angry, withdrawn, losing interest in usual activities, grades going down, might have a lot of anxiety going with it too, you know, panic attacks, some avoidance, maybe avoidance of usual activities or school avoidance. And we do know, like with the whole COVID situation we've had and some of the isolation that our kids have experienced, we think there's been a pretty significant increase in the risk for psychiatric problems. So this is a difficult time. We also know there are other risk factors for substance use, things like lack of social attachments, genetic-related issues. Also, just having availability, having a friend, having friends or family members that do make substances available is certainly a risk, as well as like adverse childhood events like trauma, bullying, situations like that. So in terms of like signs of use, the things that we often look for are abrupt changes in behavior, declining grades, isolation, strong emotions, maybe changing friends, getting rid of old friends and hanging out with new ones, breaking rules, being really argumentative, disengaged, and then physical changes too that can go along with it, like fatigue, health complaints, maybe losing weight, things like that. So some of those, you know, that sounds very similar to what we might see with mental health problems, and that's true. Sometimes it's like, is this a mental health issue or a substance use issue or both? And of course, as always, would suggest having a child evaluated if those things are of concern. Many times, it's both. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about enhancing protective factors, because that's really what we're after, is to try to prevent this from happening. And we know that if we can prevent the first use, that gives us a chance of preventing ongoing misuse and then having it become like a substance use disorder problem. And so one of the main things here is communication. I think you've kind of heard that from all of us so far, that communication, having that open line. So it gives you an opportunity to have conversations around the facts and education, talking about drugs, but also allowing questions and listening. Even if you're hearing things that you disagree with or you feel like are not really factual, still being able to be there to listen and have a rational conversation and talk about these things. And another part too is also role modeling. What can we do to show our kids how to manage stress? And what kind of healthy habits and behaviors can we do that show them that, hey, you know, we can handle stress and we can handle it in ways that are healthy, and you know that might be with certain exercise routines, other healthy habits, activities, things along that line. having a strong relationship, kids having a strong relationship with a parent, caregiver, or an adult role model is very important, of course, as well as social engagement. Also learning drug refusal skills, being ready, because it will happen. There will be encounters. So how prepared is the child for dealing with that? Do they have kind of a script in mind ahead of time? Hey, what am I going to say to get out of here if the pressure's on? And having that conversation with them, just asking. So you're in a tough situation like this. What can you do? What can we do? What can we do to support you to be able to get away from that situation and from that temptation? The other thing too is like getting involved in the social life of the kid, and also, and we've talked a little bit about social media, really getting into that and monitoring that closely. And of course, always thinking about getting help if there are concerns about or suspicions of substance use or mental health problems. We want to get on that really quickly. So if those things are identified, the quicker we can intervene, the better. And on the next slide, I wanted to talk some about communication tips. So talked about a few already, but again, that strong bond, it really comes down to that. Also, how you talk to a younger child versus a teenager will be much different. With a young child, it's going to be much more black and white, kinds of stuff. With a teenager, you're likely to get debate. So, that's okay. Opening that dialogue up and then being able to work it through, think about how we're going to actually get the facts and how we're going to, talk about this, but establishing that communication line and not having that closed down is so important. So again, just open conversations with listening, just very important in what in how we handle this. Also explaining the dangers, the educational aspects. So like the information you're hearing tonight, all those facts that you can present and talk with kids about, and to help them understand what the scope of the problem. Many times people just don't know. And again, it's just handling temptation. What kind of tools do we give our kids to be able to do that? And then also talking about suspicions, like if you suspect that a child is having substance use problems or mental health issues that you're observing, some of the signs we've talked about, to be able to just go to them and talk about it and try to figure out what's going on so that the appropriate interventions can be made. So really it comes down to communication, education, and observation. The communication, keeping that open line, part of that's education, and then an observation, just looking for things that seem different that might point to a mental health issue or to substance use or both.
Thank you. This is a good time to also remind you that we are going to be taking some questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking a question tonight, please text us. We're monitoring the text messages. Ask us anything, and our panelists will answer. Oftentimes we look at our laws to just figure out, okay, how are we impacting change? What's happening? What could the state be doing more to combat this crisis? Well, someone tonight that is making a difference on that front is our State Representative Ann Johnson. She drove in from the Houston area to be part of our panel tonight, and she was instrumental in a bill which passed last session and focuses on stiffer penalties when it comes to making and distributing fentanyl in Texas. Hi, Representative Johnson.
Thank you so much, and it is an honor to be with you all. Glad to be here from Houston to join you in Austin to talk about an important change that your Texas legislature made, and that is to set aside and recognize that the dealing of fentanyl is something that we are going to bump up, meaning there is an old saying in the criminal justice system about what's the cost or what's the price of doing business. And so Texas has told those that are dealing, those that are selling fentanyl illegally, that you're going to spend more time in prison than somebody who is selling something else. I think that's an important signal, but the reason that we send that signal as a legislature is because we're really trying to speak to the people that might be hurt. I have to say, sitting here and watching the scroll of faces that went by, I can only imagine the pain that those families feel from the loss. And I can only imagine the conversations that those families probably had with those kids before to say, please don't do drugs. And I can only imagine all the times and the thoughts that everybody thought, it won't happen to me. We'll never see those children. We won't see them graduate. We won't see them marry. We won't see them have children. And we won't see that because somebody could maybe make $30. They could make a small bit of cash off of selling something illegally manufactured because right now it's popular. How many of y'all remember Lifesaver soda? Anybody? Nobody remembers Lifesaver soda. So Lifesaver soda is one of the biggest corporate flops. When they blind tasted it and they put it out and they had people drink it, people said, I really like this. And then when they put those goofy bottles in the containers at the 7-Elevens and it looked like a goofy thing of Lifesaver soda and they were purple and yellow, these gross looking colors, guess what happened? Nobody bought it. And that's why you've never heard of Lifesaver soda. And so the message that we really want to send is don't buy it. Now, my name is Ann Johnson, and I am proud to be one of your state reps, but one of the things I'm most proud about is I have done juvenile defense work. I represent kids in court where you get to talk to me privately, and I never tell your parents what you say. I get to stand in front of a judge, and I get to defend you, and I get to try to help you put your life back in order. I've also been your chief human trafficking prosecutor in Harris County. And what that means is I've sat down with hundreds of thousands of kids who have been victims. And I'll tell you the common theme is they look for the moment where you have a weakness or a vulnerability. They look for that moment and they try to get you either hooked with them or to offer you a drug. And these are people that are part of organized crime. I promise you, the people that are asking you to buy something from them and ingest it, they don't care about you. You are simply somebody that will hand over cash. Nobody will ever ask you to do something that would hurt you out of love. So when you talk about new friends, they're not new friends. Your new friends will not want you to separate from your family. New friends won't want you to separate from your old friends that you've had. New friends that are asking you to do something different in your life that may hurt you are not friends. And so I would also say this to parents. I promise you, you don't want your kid in jail. You don't want them arrested. It doesn't teach them a lesson. There's a whole other discussion that we could have about that. But I would say have a deal with your kids. And kids have a deal with your parents. And that is, let's say you're out at a party and something's not going right, that you can text them an emoji that says, just come pick me up, no questions. And just go get your kid. And for the child in that moment, just recognize when somebody asks you to do something that doesn't sound right, it's not. And these law enforcement officers are telling you there's a reason that they have this phrase, one pill can kill. Because it could be that one pill, because the people that are selling it and manufacturing it, they're not a pharmacist and a doctor with a prescription. They're not calculating the dose that's in it. They're not asking you your height and your weight. They're just asking you if you got 15 to 30 bucks. It is not worth the risk. And it is why we are trying to send a message and change the laws to tell these people we don't want them taking advantage of you. Make fentanyl lifesaver soda. If we don't buy it, it goes away.
Thank you, Representative Johnson, and thanks to our panel. We're going to put up a slide with some contact information, and please, if tonight's not the night you want to ask a question or have a conversation, reach out to us. I do want to open it up to any questions in the audience, and if you want, you can also text your questions. We're going to have some folks walking around with microphones. If anyone wants to ask a question, don't be shy. Give us 1 second. Can I give you this one? Hello?
I've got a question while we're working through that. This is from an online person for Representative Johnson. Is Texas doing too much reactive work? Border seizures, criminal penalties, but what more can Texas do to stop the drug before it gets to that point?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again? I missed the beginning.
No worries. Is Texas doing too much reactive work? Border seizures, criminal penalties, but what more can Texas do to stop the drug before it gets to that point?
So the question was, are we being more reactive, and what can we do to be proactive, I think. And so you're right, we are reacting. And we are reacting, and we have increased the punishment range on the sale of fentanyl because 57% of overdoses are because of this drug. Either because it's a tablet that you think you're getting a prescription fentanyl, or they're lacing other drugs that, again, you're not getting at your CVS, your Walgreens out of a packaging, but you're getting from somebody that has a little plastic baggie in their book bag or out at the mall or wherever else and saying, hey, buy 1 or 2 of these things, take it, and it'll make you feel better. So yes, are we reacting? We are reacting because there is a crisis around fentanyl at the moment. But what do we do to be proactive? And again, I think that comes back to what you're hearing of a group discussion here. Mental health. In my experience, when I've seen kids, many times people will reach out because peer pressure. People will tell you it's cool to smoke something or take something, but it's not cool to go see a counselor. And so sometimes people self-medicate. And so we need to get away from that stigma. It is a good thing to seek help. Just like if you were trying to lose weight, you'd go see a dietitian. If you're trying to learn how to lift weights and play football, you'd go see a coach. There's nothing wrong with going to reach out for the right help when you're struggling. And let me say, first of all, I don't know how you kids do it. Your experience in junior high and high school is so different from any of ours. The pressures you feel today really are. I promise you, if your parents say, I had it rougher, go, The pressures that you guys deal with social media and everything else, it really is rough. So reach out for the right kind of help. So what do we do to be proactive? I think what we do to be proactive are things like today. To talk about the thing we don't want to talk about, because it's the thing we don't talk about that can control us. And so acknowledging that it is not cool for somebody to offer you drugs. It is not cool to take them. And I think we have to change the conversation around this a little bit. And so I do think we need to be more proactive about reducing demand, because these illegal substances wouldn't be flooding our state if people weren't buying them. And so we have a part to play as well. Don't buy. Don't buy. Don't give them that $15 that can risk your life.
I think you should have a working microphone now. Go ahead. Or maybe just come on up here, if you don't mind. I'm sorry.
Okay, you can hear me now. Okay. This question is probably for Becky. What is the best way to get you into the public schools? For instance, Leander ISD, would you go through the shack? Would you go through the healthy lifestyles or the PTA? Like, what is the best way to get you in to get a presentation going?
Ask me. That's all. I have reached out to Leander ISD, and we are so willing. Anybody who's willing to listen to us or open to listening to our presentation and story. So I would ask you as parents to get in touch with your representatives there at school, whether it's through the mental health portion. I've had really good luck getting in with counselors who understand the mental health piece of it and the importance of it, and they're able to push it a little bit more. So the larger school districts are difficult, because I do know and I understand there's more red tape, but how much red tape are you willing to go through when your kids are dying on a daily basis? Are you going to wait till 3 other kids die in your school before you actually have us come talk? Or it doesn't have to be us. It can be anybody. And a lot of people are equipped with this knowledge to do something about it and to have those discussions. So we are more than willing to help you with that. So just reach out to me. Thank you.
I have something to add to that. As parents, you need to get a hold of your shacks, and you need to talk to your superintendents. If you don't know, DEA comes to schools on a regular basis during Red Ribbon Week. But I will tell you from personal experience that I know that I might not get through to students on my story because I'm in a law enforcement. So I have went to schools, and I have access to recovering addicts and people like that I have offered to bring in the schools, and the schools don't want it. So you need to start demanding that kind of stuff.
Gina, what is SHAST?
So that's the Student Health Advisory Committee that I don't know if it's by county or school district. So that's one of the ways to get in.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, hi.
This is for Sergeant Miller. I have a 9th grader at Cedar Park High School, and my question is, what is the responsibility of the administration at the school when they know there are drugs on campus?
That's a great question. I mean, especially in cases where, in these situations where it's a felony, I mean, they have a duty to report it. If there's information about the sale of drugs going on, or even the possession of drugs like this, they have a duty to report it. Now, we don't have the ability to tell them how to do their jobs or how to run their district. We have a good working relationship with LISD, but when it comes down to it, it's dependent upon them to make the call or not. I can tell you they have done that in the past. Now, nothing specific to fentanyl, to my knowledge, but it is on them to make the call. There is no reporting system that we monitor that they report to. It's on them to notify us. But we just continue to try to build the best relationship we can with them, and especially with a subject matter like this, as serious as it is, it's just important to try to make them understand how important it is, regardless of the impact they think it may cause.
Any other questions?
I've got
As you
several
make your
here.
way, yes, go ahead, Dwayne. I was just going
Right.
to check in with you.
So one of the questions is, I currently work with adolescents in an IOP setting, intensive outpatient treatment facility, and these teens can be there for mental health issues, substance abuse, or both. How would you introduce this topic to an already vulnerable population and provide them with the most useful tools about fentanyl? None are currently familiar with what fentanyl is or the dangers.
Yeah, I think this is a great question as far as how to get that kind of education there. I think it's super important, obviously. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just being super intentional about it. Let's get some information in, bring some people in, give some brochures out. Trying to think what else could really get it done. But I think but the main point is about the education aspects of it, and for kids to understand that they don't know what they're getting, and it's very true that one pill can kill, and that's the message we're bringing tonight, and I think the message that we need to make sure our kids that are in services are getting as well.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Okay. Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
My 19-year-old son died 5 months ago from a fentanyl overdose, and my question is more kind of elaborating with Bluebonnet. Can you address and talk about the addiction component of it? Because we know how much stronger it is than heroin or cocaine, and how addictive it is, and that was our experience in the very little bit of time that he had used. It was just, it was so intense, and that I've talked to addicts now, and just to understand that craving that they feel in their head. I think for children it's really important to know this, because our son was, like him, an awesome boy that just really, I think that kids really need to understand how addictive in one time can make you hooked.
Yes, it's very, very addictive. And, the thing about it is we don't know what it's in, right? Because now it's in everything. It's in, even vape pens. And so when someone tries something that they think is very, innocent, as THC, or something that's not as hard of a drug as heroin, they're not really realizing, what they're getting themselves into, because the opiate addiction is so strong, and it creates, a physical addiction. And so, where you get sick if you don't have it. And so we have at Bluebonnet a medication-assisted treatment program, and also an intensive outpatient program. So we are giving education on overdose prevention, and education on all of the different types of drugs and what the symptoms are, what the withdrawal symptoms are like, because the withdrawal symptoms are really extreme. And so I did bring some brochures for our outpatient program and MAT program. So if anybody is interested in taking home some of those flyers, I'd be happy to leave those with you after this is done. So thank you.
Yes, we have another question. Oh, sorry. Yes, Sergeant Miller.
Just from my experience and talking to a lot of addicts that I've worked with, a lot of users that I've worked with, the way they've described it and what creates that addiction is the first time they try it, and generally it's in a party setting, a recreational setting, is they're chasing that high, that first high they get from the first time they use it. They want that feeling again, and they generally never get that feeling again, so they continue to use, and they continue to use, and they increase their usage in hopes to try to feel that feeling again, and then it just turns into an addiction. So that's the best way I can say is that's going to be the the best way to explain it is, yeah, you've tried it once, and you're going to try to continue to try it to feel it again, but it's never going to happen.
And if I could go back to when we're doing these presentations at schools, that is a very good point. And who better is going to be able to tell you how addictive it is than a recovering addict? When I did bring a recovering addict with me to speak at one point, they were able to tell them, you can say the word cocaine to me, and I'm feeling that I need it. So the way an addict can actually describe it in these presentations is going to come over much, much more to make them understand that just that one time, how they started and how they got to where they are today. So that is a very good point that I think we need to watch and have keynote speakers when we come to schools.
I think we had a few more questions over here in the middle. Yes. Do you have a microphone or want to? The question was, can you speak to us about Narcan?
Yes. So what this is an overdose reversal drug. So in this box, there's 2 cartridges, and this particular type of Narcan can be administered nasally. And so if you suspect that someone is having an overdose, if you have this handy, you can just put it, right up to the nose, and just, they don't have to sniff it in or anything like that. If you just squeeze it, it'll go in and it'll reverse an opioid overdose. So one of the things that they're finding is with fentanyl, it's so much stronger that it doesn't you don't just need 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. And I've heard of, talked to paramedics that have used up to 5 before. Oops, thank you. So there's 2 in this, and so it's good to have this around because you don't ever know when someone's going to have fentanyl in something. So I think, just to have this in your house or your car, to have it readily available. I have some in my car that I keep in my car, just in case I even see someone at the store that falls on the floor having an overdose. So it's all the police officers carry it, all the paramedics carry it. We have it at all of our clinics. I have it, like I said, in my car. I want to give it to everybody. So.
And Melissa, tell us, if you can, if tonight's not a place where you want to pick one up, where can people get it? You can go online. It's free.
Yes, you can. There's a website called morenarcanplease.com, I think is what it's called. And if you just get online, Google it, you can order it free from a lot of different places. They also sell it at the pharmacies too, like Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, all of those have them too, but you can access it free online.
If you go through online, it usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get it.
One more thing that I wanted to let you know, that if you do use it and it's not an overdose, it's not going to be harmful to the person that you're using it on. So you can use it and nothing's going to happen if it's not an overdose. So, yeah. So.
A question. Is fentanyl only found in pill form, or are things like weed and cocaine, etc., laced with it too?
The question was just in pill form that we've seen? Yes. We haven't run across any other substance that contains it. It's like I was talking to Becky earlier. Generally, you're not going to see anything else that just contains it. It's just going to be manufactured solely with fentanyl. So I haven't seen it. Have you, Gina?
We haven't seen it being distributed. However, at our level, our undercovers and things are buying the actual fentanyl powder. So it is here in Texas and across the nation where you can buy just straight up fentanyl powder, and then you can put it into whatever you want. So we are only seeing it in the counterfeit pharmaceuticals, but we're also seeing it in powder form.
I think, yes, go ahead. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just
Go ahead,
wanted to
Elsa.
add to that. We have had people report when we're doing screenings that they've had overdoses, and all they thought that they were doing was meth, and then they overdosed and realized after that that it was fentanyl in the meth and also cocaine, as well as we've had several people that tested positive for fentanyl that all they had done was smoke marijuana. So, that's their report. Now, that may not be true, but I'm inclined to believe it. So, yeah.
So that's one thing I wanted to kind of touch on. We've had that happen several times where we've had someone tell us, I just used THC, or I just smoked weed, and then their blood comes back with fentanyl, and then of course that's when, okay, well, I'll tell you the truth, yeah, I did use it. So that's also something to be mindful of. If you're generally not going to see, especially in your kids or friends, you're not going to see the same type of symptoms or the same type of reaction with fentanyl that you would with marijuana. So if their pupils are pinpoint and they're lethargic or they're passing out, that's an opiate poisoning. That's not marijuana, right? And then also, too, just to correct one thing I did say, I have seen heroin cut with fentanyl. We have seized heroin that someone used fentanyl to, I guess, enhance it. So we have seen that in the past.
Becky, firstly, thank you so much for putting this together. I don't know the amount of courage you have, because it takes tremendous courage to just stand and do what you're doing. My big question is the amount of kids I saw today on the screen. It's not just LISD, it's not just Cedar Park. It is all across too many schools. So my simple question is, not every school is represented. Like I volunteer at LBJ, and I know parents are hardly involved. So what do we do to get to that? And at other governmental levels, like at county level or at city level, how involved are the other officials, especially if we look at the police are defunded or they do not have enough staffing levels. So it's a wide range of questions I'm asking, but I'm trying to see how we can get to more kids and have the awareness. So I heard a representative say it, that there are fines and stricter punishments, but there is nothing to, deterrence is after the event has happened, but what can we do to propel this in the right direction is what I'm heading to.
100% it takes a village. And everyone here in this room, if each one of you talked to an official at your school, or even a county official, or at the state level, and just started those dialogues of how can we get this conversation happening. And there's one demographic that I want to make sure we don't lose track of, and that's homeschool kids as well. Because those homeschool kids, who's talking to them? But there are groups of homeschoolers that can get together. So if any of you guys are homeschooled or homeschool your children, get a group of homeschool kids together and have a meeting and have those discussions. But it is going to take persistence. It's not an easy thing to convince schools or to convince elected officials, or, I get people have other agendas and have bigger, things to chase after, but again, the daily rate of deaths that are happening, people need to start listening. And so the passion that people can leave here with is to have that frame of mind of what can we do? Get creative, be bold, don't be afraid of rejection. And that's where I got to. If I can go through losing my child and go through that pain and turn that pain into passion to share this with others, then I'm not afraid of rejection. I used to be. Nobody likes to be told no. But even no's don't get me stopped. It's got to keep happening, and just be open to talking to anybody and everybody and asking if they'd be willing to listen and have a group. It doesn't have to be a massive group. It can be small, and it grows from there. Does that help?
Kind of. I was just trying to see if you had reached out to any city officials or at a county level, at the state level, to just reach a broader audience.
I personally have not, because my focus has been in the schools and getting education out. This event right here, these are the elected officials that I have reached out to so far, and I'm hoping it just expands from there, because they get them along and start saying the same message.
Becky, I think Representative Johnson, go ahead.
If I can clarify, because I know the statement was we've increased punishment. I want to be real clear that what Texas law is recognizing are two different populations. One is addiction. One is personal use. If you have a pill on you and you are an addict, the law is keeping you at a range where the goal is to help you get rehabilitation, treatment, and to not be in the criminal justice system. So we have kept that there, right, in recognizing that the addict needs to be treated in one way and given the opportunity to get out of this situation. The increased punishments are on those people that are delivering. And let me tell you something about dealers. Dealers that are making the profit, they don't use, because they don't use their own product because they know the harm that it causes, right? We're talking about punishing those people that are pushing and peddling and selling this stuff that puts you in a position of being an addict. And so, I just want to clarify that, because if you are an addict, reach out for help. There are lots of avenues, whether it's treatment or within the law, that recognizes the distinction on addiction. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can add to that real quick. DEA actually created a curriculum that is available to all school districts that brings it into the actual curriculum in a health class. So I challenge you to tell your schools it's called Operation Prevention, and we provide that curriculum for free. But also another thing that we are doing is we do partner, like we partner with coalitions. For example, I partner with Williamson County's coalition, Life Steps on Drug and Alcohol Abuse, and so we do events together with them on different levels.
We are starting to approach a time where we're going to be wrapping up. We are going to take a few more questions, and I know we've gotten a lot of questions texted to us. Thank you so much. We will answer those questions, but it might be in another format. So while we have a few more minutes, let's go ahead to the audience. I think we had, yes, ma'am, over there. Or Dwayne, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Dwayne.
All right. Full disclosure, I'm the father of Cameron Stewart, so I'm very passionate about this as well. And I guess this is more for the representative. I think the latest numbers we have is over 100,000 people in this country died from drug deaths the last calendar year. That has never happened in the history of this country, and from what I understand, the vast majority of these it's because of fentanyl, because drug overdose deaths have been pretty linear throughout the decades in this country, and they've been pretty good at predicting that year to year. So it's fentanyl, and the vast majority of this stuff is coming over the southern border. So my question is, I understand that we're being reactive, and that's what I think as well. When are we going to really get serious about our southern border? Because I understand that we're the consumers, and that's why they bring it over. But if it does not make it here, we cannot consume it. What do we have to wait for 200,000 or 500,000, or do we have to wait for maybe some politicians' children to die of this? God forbid. I would never want that to happen. But I'm just wondering when we're really, really going to get serious about this stuff coming into this country and killing our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Dwight and Becky, one, for sharing your experience. You all did not have to create this moment of public awareness through your loss. And I think it speaks volumes about your strength and your love for your son, that you are making sure that what has happened to him provides an opportunity that you may save somebody else's child. And so that is an incredibly selfless act that you've taken on it, and I cannot thank you enough for doing that. We are reacting to this crisis of fentanyl, and it is something that is so toxic, so lethal, that even if emergency medical personnel show up on a scene of an overdose, that mere presence of it can lead to their loss of life. And so it is a substance like we have not seen. And I know for other folks that talk about older days or illegal drug use, and it was just a part of growing up, I think these officers can tell you, you would not recognize the drugs that are being exposed to these kids, whether it's any form. The old days of thinking about smoking a joint, that doesn't exist today. These kids are not getting that experience. What's being offered to them is absolutely lethal. And so we do have to refocus our demand side and ensuring that people are not condoning the idea that illegal drug use is something that we can do. We absolutely, I'll tell you from this last session, there was almost $3 billion that was sent to try to deal with issues around the border. And so, again, I don't know that, I mean, that's $3 billion, right? I hope that we can have a very honest and genuine conversation about the complexities of not only the crisis that's happening around the border or humanitarian issues, and the manner in which we resolve it. And so I would love to stay in touch with you and continue to engage with you, as I know other people would, about the complexities. And I can tell you this is my promise. This is a tough discussion. And the more that we can have an honest discussion about how hard this is, and the challenges that you face, and the challenges that our students face in school, it's a complex and comprehensive problem to solve. Like what these kids are going through with mental health crisis in school, that's part of the solution to ensuring that they're not accepting that pill that's getting offered to them. And so I would love to stay in touch with you about all these issues.
I know we have a few more questions. Are we okay? Okay. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Annie Hernandez, and I lost my son 3 years ago to fentanyl overdose. Right now, we are getting, it seems, a lot of money coming into the states from the opioid lawsuits. What do we have? Do we have anything in place where that money is going to be delegated to?
That's a great question, and yes, there has been a massive litigation nationwide around the opioid crisis, and part of that is legitimate pharmaceutical sales where people were addicted by wrongful means, right? So you may have people that were addicted through a process where it was legitimately manufactured, but somebody was at risk, right, when they could have used other means. And then, of course, you have illegal manufacturing of opioids that are leading. And so I don't believe that lawsuit has been finalized, but the goal of that litigation and a significant amount of the funds that are coming in are meant to compensate for the harm that's been done through the opioid crisis throughout the community. And so when you look at this issue, it puts a significant strain on all of our public resources, including law enforcement, what they go through, hospital systems, and what they go through. And so you're right. You bring up a really good point. It is not just illegal manufacturing of opioids and synthetics, but it is also those that were legally manufactured and people were addicted to. And so, again, that you bring up the complexities of this challenge and the fact that it is hitting us from all angles.
Thank you, Annie. Nice to meet you finally. Annie's been very active in the awareness campaign, so if you have a minute, please go talk to her. As we're starting to wrap it up, we're going to be around, so please come up and talk to any of us. The panelists will be here for a little bit longer. I know Dwayne has been monitoring text questions, and we have not forgotten about those. We are going to answer those questions, and if you have additional questions, just go look for Change for CAM, and either post your questions to Facebook or through the Facebook page or the website. Becky, do you want to provide any other details where we can answer those questions?
Sure, you can also email achangeforcam@gmail.com. And we do have a website, achangeforcam.org, and you are more than welcome to reach out that way, or I know a lot of you here, so if you have questions, obviously, text me or call me. But yeah, just send an email, and we'll, if I can't help you, I will certainly find someone that can.
Find me at KXAN and send it to me, and I'll get it to one of these guys. And please come and ask any questions that you may have if we didn't get to you, and the text questions we will get to. Thank you guys so much for being here and being part of this important and crucial discussion. And of course, thank you to our panelists. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay, no worries. I know, unfortunately, sometimes it takes very shocking statistics to get people involved in realizing that there is an issue. And I don't think that any of you shared it unless I missed it, but what are the statistics looking like within our area and even just within Texas of the number of deaths and also maybe even the increase of actual numbers or percentages that have been seen over the last, I don't even know what, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
As far as within the city of Cedar Park, within the last a little over 2 years now, we've experienced or we've investigated 30 overdoses or 30 poisonings, and 11 of those were fatal. So we do. If you're referring to reporting a poisoning, so we do. That was actually, was it this last session? I believe it was this last legislative session that was enacted, but if you are in fact a victim of a poisoning and you report it and you have, there's an amount to it. I believe if it's less than a gram of the controlled substance on you, then you can't be charged with it. Also, if you were a witness to it, in the same sense, you're not going to be charged. So there is some type of that law that was put into place during the last session.
I was trying to look up some specific data because we did just report on this, and I'll get with you on the data. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Juveniles that are committing homicides, and a lot of it has to do with drugs, and a lot of it has to do with petty deals gone bad. And what we're seeing, at least some of the families I represent from Williamson County, is that a lot of juveniles feel protected because they are juveniles, and that their consequences won't be as firm if they're not transitioned into an adult. And I feel like a lot of this has to do with the drug issues that are going on. I know in Travis County, it's about every week that we have a homicide, and so many go back to it has to do with drugs. It's sad, and I'm dealing with a lot of people that are losing loved ones to this as a result of the increase of drug use. One of the things I do with Williamson County is that I present to the Williamson County Juvenile Facility and make a presentation 4 times a year and talk to the kids. I call them kids in training before they become the real criminal. It's kind of outpatient for the kids I work with. They have to be present with their parents. It's like a probation. I present information about empathy, and I am also a victim of violent crime twice within my family. So that is another piece that I can add. And I also know in Travis County, I did presentations at Garner Betts. Now that's capturing a lot of kids that might not be captured in school settings, because these are the kids that may not even make it out of high school. And I know that there are ways to get in to do these panels as a suggestion. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I have an overdose group that's run through the Christie Center, and we have free services. And this group is twice a month on a Tuesday evening, and I have people from all over the United States who attend it. People from West Virginia and all the areas that really have been affected by loss due to addiction, just using a pill, not using a pill. It's a group of amazing people that come because with any kind of use, there's a history. A lot of families have gone through years of trying to deal with this. And then finally they get that knock on the door or they get that phone call. So I notice for these parents, it's heroin, fentanyl. The majority of the loss right now is heroin, fentanyl. And I have people as young as probably, we've had people 16, 15, all the way up to 50s. So this is a real issue, and I know that I would like to get into the school systems in Austin, but it's tough because of COVID and other issues, but also I did work with treatment centers, grief, loss, and addiction. That's another big one. Kids lose people in their lives, and they feel like they want to go and numb. And a lot of people that are in treatment centers also have seen friends, family die from this. So it's a huge platform. It's multi-layered, but I think like tonight, it's the beginning. It's a presentation. It's awareness. And the more that we do this, the more that we can begin to deal with this major issue on levels of local all the way up to national. But we got to be aware. We're kind of late with all this. You know, up north, it's like communities have been wiped out, populations in schools, and now we're finally beginning to acknowledge that there's so many people now that are dying. So that's my comments.
I wanted to share real quick, since you brought up the numbers and statistics, our most recent data shows that from 2019 to 2020, and keep in mind it's a little behind, there were 658 synthetic opioid deaths due to fentanyl in Texas. Last year, that number more than doubled to 1,482. It keeps going up by great amounts. And this is not even updated to this year. We'll get those numbers, but if that's any indication, and the fact that Cedar Park keeps seeing an increase, that's one community within our area. Thank you guys so much. Please come up, ask anything if we didn't get to your question. And again, those text questions, we will get to you either tonight or by tomorrow. Thank you guys so much.